Good evening, guys, and welcome to the show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here. Today is Sunday, the 16th of September, 2018, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the background of my show and my channels. I have two channels. I have this channel, and I have another channel called Financial Turmoil Explained. Now, my job, and I take my job very seriously, is to dig out there and find the trends in the financial world, and in this case, the trends pointing toward Bitcoin, and also the trends developing in the other financial world, the financial world that's been around a lot longer than the cryptocurrencies. Now, there's a trend developing with cryptocurrencies. It's something that's new. Now, as you see, typically in a typical day for me is I'll spend around 4 hours doing research. And this is spotting these trends. Basically what I do is I get out there on the internet and I search through the internet for different subject matter relating to finance, Bitcoins, cryptocurrencies, and I try to spot trends that are developing. I also search through the regular world news and see what's happening on the world's geopolitical scene. And typically I spend about 4 hours doing this a day, this work. Now, this work is not hard work. It's really quite simple work, but it's quite tedious. But that's the first part of my job that I do is searching through and doing research on the internet. It's actually quite enjoyable work. I enjoy my job doing the research. Then the second part of my job is creating the shows. And typically I'll create 2 to 3 shows a day. And that, believe it or not, doesn't take as much time as the research. And typically on a typical day, it'll take 3 to 4 hours. So to complete my day, generally I work around 7 to 8 hours a day. Of course, on the weekends, maybe not quite as much, but typically that's my week. It's a very serious job because you guys, you need to know. You need to know what's really going on. And very, very recently, I've uncovered something with the cryptocurrencies that I think could be very important. We all know that the cryptocurrencies were created by, I don't really want to say the deep state, but some entity that that's associated with the, let's call it the intelligence community. We know that SHA-256, which is the underlying protocol that Bitcoin runs on, is a creation and was invented by the CIA, or the NSA, I should say, the National Security Agency. And then the CIA has been, I think, involved in a lot of these things too. It's very covert. We don't have a lot of information on this, but suffice to say, nobody has ever found out who Satoshi Nakamoto is, the so-called inventor of Bitcoin. Personally, I believe that Satoshi Nakamoto was actually the intelligence community, that they were the creator or creators. That they used probably a group of computer scientists to create this. And what gets me is the genius of it. The genius of cryptocurrencies. They solved the Byzantine general's problem, which is built inherently into these coins, the solving of this problem. And this is huge. This means we don't need a third party in transactions. Transactions can take place, and the computer acts as a third party. Or like, it's almost like a referee. You know, you go to a football game or a baseball game, there's a referee there, and the referee, he says, hey, you know what, foul or whatever. But, well, the computer in this case acts as a referee for transactions of money, monetary transactions. And it does this automated. It's the best referee you could ever get because you can't buy that referee off. Either you own the Bitcoin or you don't, and the computer says you own it, you own it. If the computer says you don't own it, you don't own it. The computer never gets it wrong. And so the banking system that we have now, they're acting as a referee, and they have the same problems as any human doing a job. They can be corrupted. They can be on the take. They can be cheaters. And they're acting as your referee. They're in charge of your money. It's like putting the fox in charge of the hen house, simply put. Okay? So that's what's going on. Now, what was the reason? Why did they create Bitcoin? This is genius. Bitcoin was genius. You have to think to yourself, why did they create it? Well, I've spotted something quite recently, and it occurred to me. It just suddenly occurred to me. I said, hey, to myself, when Bitcoin went up to $750 billion market capital, and then it still didn't occur to me. But when all that money come out, and Bitcoin went back down to 200 billion, when I say Bitcoin, I mean the cryptocurrencies in general, went back down to $200 billion market cap, it still didn't occur to me. Then I saw, immediately thereafter, for the next few months, I saw an increase in economic activity. In my general research of the economy, I saw a little spurt in growth and a little bit of inflation coming into the system. And I knew that the Fed was actually draining money out of the system. They had already started their quantitative tightening program, and they were already draining like $30 billion a month out of the system. And I was at a loss. Where is this inflation coming from? It still didn't clue in. It didn't clue in. And all of a sudden it clued in, and I said, hey, you know what? Didn't Bitcoin go up to $750 billion, Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies? And didn't they drop off to $200 billion? And all of a sudden I said, hey, there's over $500 billion there. That's $500 billion. You pump that amount of liquidity into the general economy, and you're going to get a boost. Not a bigger boost than quantitative easing. Now, in the first place, where did all that money come from? Say, well, Asians are buying Bitcoin. Not that much. You say, well, Americans are buying Bitcoin. Not that much. We're talking hundreds of billions. All of the world's people that's buying Bitcoin, your friends, your neighbors, and everything, put them all together and you wouldn't get 100 billion. Put the Asians together, put everyone together, you wouldn't get 100 billion. So where did that money come from that pushed Bitcoin up to $750 billion? Big question mark. Where that money come from? And why did the bubble burst? Big question marks here. When the bubble burst, that money come flowing out into the general system. The money come from the sky. It was raining bucks. And this is allowing that liquidity pouring into the system, is allowing the Federal Reserve to proceed with unwinding their balance sheet. Now, how criminals are always caught in the real world is the police use detectives. And detectives are trained to look for a motive. That's what the detectives are trained to do. They're trained to look for motive. Because everybody that does something, even if it's just a convenience store robbery where somebody was, and they say, oh, there's no motive behind the crime. It was gang related or whatever. Doesn't matter. If you check into it and check deep, you'll find there's a motive. Maybe the young man was doing some sort of a requirement to fit in with the group, or something like that. But there's always a motive. There's always a motive involved. This is how the police. Well, here we have a giant motive for the Fed to pump up this coin and dump it. It's quantitative easing. Well, they can say they're unwinding their balance sheet. Look, we're the good guys. We're unwinding our balance sheet. Look, everything's going to be hunky-dory. At the same time, on the other side of that coin, doing $500 billion worth of stimulus through the cryptocurrencies. And I mean, say they're innocent. Say I'm seeing a motive when there is no motive. Say they're not behind it, the Federal Reserve. Well, it sure is acting in their benefit. Now, here's the thing. We're headed toward, if the Federal Reserve keeps pulling this fiat currency out of the system at $50 billion a month like they're doing, we're heading straight toward a system failure. Because what it's like is, it's like a man that has blood in his circulatory system. The liquidity of the money in the financial system is like blood in a man's circulatory system. If a man went in one day and say he worked in construction and he went in and he decided to give a pint of blood drives on, give a pint of blood. So he went in and he signed his name, John Smith, and gave his pint of blood, right? He'd be fine. He'd go back to work that day and he wouldn't feel too much different. You know, it's just be roughly the same. But if he went in the next day and he signed himself under a different name, say he called himself Billy Bob or whatever, and went in and gave another pint of blood, the second pint of blood, he might not be quite as energetic the next day. But if he went in the third day and the fourth day and he continued to give pints of blood day after day after day, there would come a point where he would be on the job and he'd turn all white and he'd collapse because he didn't have enough blood in his system. Well, this is the same way with the financial system. The Federal Reserve now is drawing $50 billion a month out. They're just like a bloodsucker. They're drawing this money out, and the financial system all at once is going to feel it. Just like this construction worker. He doesn't feel it, He goes day after day to the blood clinic, give him blood. And all one day, all of a sudden, he collapses. Falls over in a heap. None of his workers knew he was sick. Well, that's the way with the financial system. None of these economists within the system can see that the financial system right now is sick. I can see it because I'm doing the research. You get some of these guys out there, and I mean, yeah, sure, they might have a doctorate or whatever, or they might have went to school for 20 years, but they're not paying any attention to it now. They're just listening to what the other talking heads are saying. They're not paying deep attention. They're not putting in the day-to-day research it takes, and they're not on top of it. This is the thing. In order to really know what's going on out there right now, right this minute, you need to stay on top of it, and that takes diligence. That takes research. And I'll tell you what's going on right now. The Federal Reserve right now is starting to draw $50 billion a month out of the system, and the system is going to collapse. Now, is it possible that cryptocurrencies, that they pumped them up last time? Well, if that's true, if they are using that as a tool to get money into the system, liquidity into the system, without nobody knowing that they're putting liquidity into the system, like a liquidity backdoor, so that they can continue with their quantitative tightening. So basically they would be withdrawing liquidity out on this end that everybody can see, visible. 50 billion a month. Everybody says, hey, look, the Fed's being the good guys. Look, they're, and maybe on the other side, they're pushing the money out into the cryptocurrencies. Or lately, the last few months, they haven't been. Maybe they could start again. Push the money into the cryptocurrencies real fast, shoot them up to the moon, and then pop the bubble and withdraw the money out again, and suddenly we would have another economic stimulus again. Last time it was $500 billion roughly, or $550 billion came out of the cryptocurrencies. Who pumped the money in on the other side? Because that money acted as economic stimulus. Just Bitcoin's very nature stimulates the economy. When Bitcoin starts to boom, the economy is going to boom. To a point, to a point. At a certain point, when Bitcoin goes too far and draws too much liquidity, the dollar is going to die to Bitcoin, ultimately. And ultimately, I believe that is exactly what's going to happen in time. That Bitcoin is and eventually going to exceed a certain boundary, if you were, or like when you're heading toward a black hole, there's a place where if you cross that line, the black hole's going to suck you in. Its gravity's got you. And they call that the event horizon. With Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies and the dollar, there is an event horizon. We don't know how high that is. Maybe it's $1 trillion. Maybe it's 2 trillion. Maybe it's 3 trillion. But once it crosses that line, then what happens is people on the sidelines, like just ordinary people, are going to be saying, hey, you know, my neighbor over there invested in Bitcoin last year, and he's made 10 times his money. And I'm in the dollar, and I've lost money this year. Maybe next year I'll invest in Bitcoin. Everybody starts to pour in because of greed, see? Now, we're not there right now because the Bitcoin bubble popped. Sentiment decreased. Sentiment went out the window. Everybody says, oh, I don't want to mess with Bitcoin anymore. A lot of them went back in dollars again. It's a strange world out there. At a certain point, if Bitcoin goes up to a certain point, a certain level, it's going to pass that event horizon, and it's going to start sucking in all of the fiat currency, and it's going to start to transfer value over into the cryptocurrencies at a certain point. Now, I think personally, if the Fed is playing this game, say dumping liquidity, they've got, by the way, they've got massive liquidity. I heard that they have $21 trillion in money that's been created that is like just not even on the books. $21 trillion. That could have washed the system in liquidity, but they have no way of injecting that liquidity into the system. Say Bitcoin is the pump to inject that $21 trillion into the actual money supply or the economy. It's way more than's needed to actually create a hyperinflation. And what would it do to the price of Bitcoin, ultimately? I'm going to tell you what. Bitcoin right now is what's the price right this second? Just let me check here. 6504. Okay, so Bitcoin $6,504 right this minute. I know the bubbles popped. I know that a lot of money's come out of cryptocurrencies, but you have to understand something. Bitcoin's was only $200. Now they're 6,500. That's one hell of a big increase, even though the bubbles popped. I'll tell you, for a speculative asset, a speculative investment, I'd say it's doing rather well. You want my opinion? And if you went back even further, back before they were 200, they were $60 and $30 and $20 and $10 and $2 a piece. And in fact, you go back far enough, one guy bought a pizza with 10,000 Bitcoins. That was one heck of an expensive pizza, being as what Bitcoins are worth right now. Let me tell you. So this whole thing, you know, it has no end to where it can go, because the reason why is because the way Bitcoin's fundamentally is set up. But now let's quit talking about Bitcoin. Let's talk more about what would happen. Could the Fed actually be getting ready for another pump? Could they be the ones who pumped it? I'm very suspicious. I'm not going to say that they were, because I don't know that for sure. I don't have any evidence to prove that they were, but I do see a motive for them to have done that. I do see a motive there. And the motive is, quite simply, that it injected liquidity in the system much like quantitative easing was doing, except even better. Because quantitative easing injected the money into Wall Street. Injected the money into Wall Street. It enriched the banks. Whereas this money is filtering its way through the general economy much better. It's not getting caught in the liquidity trap like the other money. The other money was from quantitative easing was like pushing on a string in the end. It didn't really get them anywhere. This is making its way into the general economy more like helicopter money. If the Federal Reserve is not responsible for it, if this is just a coincidence, for instance, then they should pay attention to the cryptocurrencies, because this is the perfect avenue for them to inject liquidity. This would be the perfect avenue for them to stimulate the economy, for the Federal Reserve to stimulate the economy. All they would, and also at the same time, enrich themselves. It's a perfect avenue for them, in my opinion. Now, that's one way it could go. The cryptocurrencies could go up massively if the Fed pumps them again. And I've almost made a Freudian slip, because I'll tell you honest to goodness truth, I really do believe that they did pump them the first time, now at this point, because I know how much money was involved, and it's the only source, I think, that ones who come up with that kind of money, hundreds and hundreds of billions. They're the only guys that's got hundreds and hundreds of billions to put into something like cryptocurrency. So I think that they probably were the ones, but I'm not sure about that. But anyway, that's besides the point. Let's take a look at that as something that could happen. They could repump Bitcoin up big time, in which case the cryptocurrencies could go higher than $20,000. Because if it worked good before, the next time they'll probably do it bigger, and brighter, and better. Okay, that's one thing. And by doing so, they could, on the other side, continue with this program of quantitative tightening much longer, because it's basically like shuffling money out of one door and into the other. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, the old saying. Okay, so that's one scenario. The other scenario I'm looking for and watching is if the Fed doesn't do that. Say the Fed says, okay, that they're not going to mess with cryptocurrencies, and cryptocurrencies stays relatively down like it is now. And the Fed continues with their quantitative tightening, well, the economy is going to collapse. And if the economy collapses, there's going to be a liquidity pinch or a crunch. And in that case, the cryptocurrencies are going to suffer, along with everything else. And because they're a speculative investment, they're going to suffer all the more so. So that's scenario number 2. At this point, what's our best play in this market scenario with cryptocurrencies? Well, I've thought it through very carefully. If the Fed goes ahead and say they are the buyer of last resort of the cryptocurrencies, and say they do pump it again, well, we're all going to make out like bandits because we're the ones that are enriching if they're pumping it. But say the Fed doesn't pump it, and say they continue to withdraw. This is the other scenario. Say they continue to withdraw money out of the general economy until the economy crashes. Well, then they're going to give us a buying opportunity in the cryptocurrencies that we might never get again. Because I'm going to tell you what, the end game, it doesn't matter which way the Fed goes, the end game is cryptocurrencies is going to become the world currencies in one form or another. Even if Bitcoin, for some reason, say Bitcoin crashes for some reason, say it locks up somehow, say some bug comes in or something, some crazy computer virus or something, God knows what, and Bitcoin goes the way of the Goonie bird. Because I'm going to tell you, if Bitcoin ever did lock up, it would decimate the price. Can you imagine people go to open up their Bitcoin wallet and the Bitcoin network is locked up and they can't spend their money? They'll panic. Everybody will sell. And the price would crash down tremendous. But you know what? If that were to happen, some other coin would come in to take Bitcoin's place. You're not going to get rid of cryptocurrency that easy. The only way you'd really get rid of cryptocurrencies is if you got rid of the internet. And I can't see that happening, not at this point. So, following these scenarios, we got these two avenues here, so to speak. One avenue is the Fed continues to keep on tightening. They crash the economy. Bitcoin price suffers. We're all going to get in there and buy it up. And then it's going to go to the moon later, once the Fed comes in to repair the economy. That is scenario number one. I think that's the number one most likely scenario. I'm going to give that scenario like a 75% chance of happening. Now there's the other scenario where the Fed is using the cryptocurrencies as a pump and dump in order to stimulate the economy. That scenario I don't think is as likely to happen, but that scenario would see the Bitcoin price rise astronomically, especially if they decide to pump it very soon, and they would have to decide to pump it very soon again in that scenario. Either way, I can see where if you're thinking, I can see where your mind's going. In either scenario, it's going to pay everybody out there to pay very close attention to the Bitcoin price and try to buy on the dips, essentially. Now, my program, I hit the dips for you guys. I try to anyway. I try really hard to spot the dips. The last buying opportunity I told you guys about, she was at 5,700, I think. Let me take a look. I'll tell you when the last, and I told you guys I said I'm going in to buy today. Let me take a look at the last one. 57.74. It was 57.74, and I told you guys, hey, you know what? Get in there, get some. You know, and you, some of you guys got in there and got some, or was it 58.79? It was under $6,000. I got some, and I think some of you guys got some, and I'm right in there right now, and I'm going to try to spot the next buying opportunity. I think that we could have a little drop in the price, and it could yield pretty good little buying opportunity coming up very soon. I think that the price could drop a little bit more, but and either way, either one of these scenarios, Bitcoin is going to make people rich. This is inevitable in the future. And not Bitcoin in particular, but cryptocurrency. See, there's a problem with me. I keep saying Bitcoin when I'm talking about the cryptocurrencies in general. Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrencies. There's many, although Bitcoin is the king. Bitcoin is the king. What would that make Ethereum, the queen? Or Ripple, the queen? You know, I think I want to get a few Ripples. I'm going to wait until try to get them when the price is just right, though. Okay, listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and thank you for watching my show. I really appreciate my audience out there. You guys are really good. And bye-bye, guys, and we'll see you on Monday on the Crypto Report coming up Monday morning. See you later.